Hi, UVic students. My name's Emily, and we're here for another episode of MLA candidate interviews. I'm joined by Nicole Duncan, who is a candidate in Oak Bay Gordon Hedge. Nicole, how's it
Hi.
going?
Hi, Emily. Nice to see you. Yeah, I'm Nicole Duncan. I'm your Green Party candidate in Oak Bay Gordon Head. And I just want to say to all those students out there watching to remember to get out and vote on the 24th of October or before during the advanced polls. And make sure your voice is heard.
Thank you. So we're going to kick it off with some rapid fire questions. Nicole, what is your favorite brunch place in your riding?
Um, I would have to say Ottavio.
Nice. Do you have a favorite coffee shop in Victoria?
In Victoria, Tre Fantastico I really like.
Nice. Are you more of a Netflix or a Disney Plus kind of person?
Definitely Netflix.
Nice. Into the real stuff. So costs like tuition and housing continue to rise while students' incomes have dropped significantly during the COVID-19 pandemic. I wonder, how will you tackle the rising costs of education, as just general cost of living as well for post-secondary students?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And I know a lot of folks are dealing with the realities of living in the world at the moment, which is increasingly challenging. And I think that really comes down to governments doing what they should and providing income supports, working together. Certainly the federal government has a key role to play here in terms of ensuring that there are opportunities specifically aimed at students, but also that there's adequate income supports for those students who are experiencing difficulties at the moment.
Yeah, thank you. What is your stance on free post-secondary education?
I think that we need to create a provincial framework, create a plan for moving towards free post-secondary education away from a student loan model towards basically a grant program. But again, given the federal government's role in this, not just in terms of transfer payments for education, but also in relation to their role around the tax code, again, we would need to work with the federal government in putting together a framework for how we would move forward on that.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, you touched on this a little bit, but I'm wondering how you will economically support students in terms of job opportunities. Many have lost their sources of income during the pandemic, and I'm wondering how you'll create job opportunities for students.
I think we need to definitely work with the federal government on this one, and really focus on where those opportunities are, what are students interested in doing, and really focus our efforts on working together to fund that kind of thing. But I also think it's about income supports, because it's not just students, of course, who are experiencing joblessness. And to some extent, where there aren't opportunities, we need to be sure that we're offering supports just to allow people to get through this period until everybody's up and running and some of those opportunities start to open up. I'm thinking in particular around tourism. I know a lot of students, they rely on service industries and tourist focused industries for jobs. And right now those businesses are really struggling. And so as soon as the provincial government can get out and support, open up all those COVID restart plan funding again, get this election behind us so that we can actually get that funding in place, the sooner we'll have opportunities to offer our students.
Great. So pivoting here a bit, students overwhelmingly believe that the climate emergency requires both immediate and effective response from all levels of government. And I'm wondering what specific actions you'll take to ensure that BC meets the required milestones of at least a 45% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 and net zero emissions by 2050.
Yeah, I think that it's clear that it's time for action, and I think it's wonderful that our young people realize that and support that. The Green Party has been very clear that we will not support fossil fuel industries with subsidies. We're the only party that has really stood strong and clear on a vision for our province that does not include fossil fuel industries in the long term, and certainly doesn't include huge subsidies to those industries. So I would want to see, and I would support, huge investment of public money in a green economy, in innovation, moving us away from dependence on fossil fuels. I think it's the only way that we can truly meet those targets. I'd also focus on agriculture, protecting land, encouraging young people to start farming, try to secure our agricultural land and our future food security, focusing on the local level, protecting species that we're losing, looking at forestry, selective logging, sustainable practices. Those are the things I think that are going to move us forward into the future.
Yeah, thanks for that answer. So 4 years after Bill 23, which was the Sexual Violence and Misconduct Policy Act, we continue to hear from students that many post-secondary institutions haven't yet implemented effective sexual violence and misconduct policies. So in an effort to ensure that students are safe from sexualized violence on campus, I'm wondering how you'll create and regulate minimum standards for post-secondary institutions, so they can really, fulfill these policies and roll them out on their campuses.
Yeah, so I guess what I would say first is that all post-secondary institutions are required to have policies in place. If they don't, then that's a huge concern and it's against the legislation. But for those that do, and there are gaps, what I would suggest and what I would focus my efforts on is ensuring that the built-in review cycle, so there's a minimum review standard in place whereby they have to review it and how well it's working once every 3 years at a minimum. But it also opens the door for additional reviews to take place where there's gaps identified. And those reviews should include all the stakeholders, and in particular students. The other thing I would say is, besides do a review and demand a review, is really focus on education and awareness, but not just for students, but for like the executive levels of administration, for faculty, for everybody involved in the institution. And then focus on talking about consent at a younger age. I think we need to open up the dialogue at a younger age with young people so that when they get to university, they already understand the norms and the expectations around this important topic.
Yeah, thanks for that. So UVic students have also expressed a really strong desire to create a more socially just province. Current measures by municipalities to reduce systemic racism in police forces simply haven't solved the problem, and economic inequities in marginalized groups continue to create generational challenges for children, families, and communities. I'm wondering what approach you'll take to, amending the Police Act to address systemic racism in policing, or just, in general, how you'll address systemic racism in this province.
Yeah, I think we have to address it head on. And we have to have an open dialogue, and we have to include everyone in the discussion. But in terms of police in particular, I think it's, the Police Act is over 40 years old. It's time to modernize that piece of legislation. I'm not convinced that modernizing the legislation will actually address the root issues, though. And so I know that there, certainly before this unnecessarily election, there were steps being made to put together a committee at the legislative level to look at policing. They were due to report in May 2021. And so that will be kind of one avenue, one way that elected representatives can feed into how we go about reforming policing. But I think, again, that what education and awareness, understanding the role of police that has changed, and really educating our police about what their new modern role looks like, what the expectations and norms are, strengthening the enforcement and regulatory bodies that address police misconduct, we need to make sure that those enforcement and regulatory bodies are independent and have adequate enforcement powers in order to address issues when they arise. But I can't stress that education and awareness piece enough. But there's also some really interesting partnerships developing and that have worked in other jurisdictions between police and social services. So I think that's something that I hope and I certainly would support us focusing our efforts on.
Thank you. And just in the last sort of little bit of this interview, I'm wondering how you would address the opioid crisis that it exists in BC.
I think we most certainly, without a doubt, need to make greater investments, not just in treatment options and more detox spaces, but we also, again, it's amazing how many times it comes back to education and awareness, but really, truly supporting families with relatives that have substance abuse issues, that have challenges in that area. It means that the entire community really needs to become more aware about what those challenges mean, and really get behind the supports that are required, both for the individuals that are in the middle of an addiction cycle, but also for the family members that support their family dealing with that. It's a health crisis, and I think we need to focus our resources on providing supports within the health services context. I think it also requires us to look at our mental health supports and really acknowledge the links that there often are between mental health and addiction and vice versa.
Well, thank you so much, Nicole. Is there a way that UVic students can get in touch with you or volunteer for your campaign even?
Yes, absolutely. Please do go to bcgreens.ca, and then you can click on the candidates page, Nicole Duncan, and you'll be able to click on volunteer or donate. We are really looking for volunteers at the moment, so if anyone out there is passionate about the Green Party and some of our very progressive policies, please do volunteer.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.